Hi there, I'm Alison Keurig, owner of Stitched Real Estate LLC Transaction Coordination Company, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is a hot topic, which is all about making the transition from real estate agent to transaction coordinator. I see a ton of agents in my coaching and in my communication with you guys who are looking to make that transition to become a transaction coordinator for a variety of reasons, right? Maybe they want to slow down and, have some more set hours, things like that. Maybe they're like me and they just realize I really don't like the showing, negotiating. That's not my strength and my skill set, but I'm really good at the organizational paperwork, transaction management, that kind of stuff. So there's any different reason you may want to transition, but it's really common that we see people getting into this field from starting out as real estate agents. But there are definitely some hurdles and challenges to this, even though you have that real estate experience. And so I really want to go over today making that transition from agent to transaction coordinator. Now, before we dive in, if you are enjoying any of our other content, I hope you will subscribe to our channel. If you are watching this video for the first time, head over to our channel and check out our other videos. Please be sure to like and subscribe. It helps us create more great videos like this for you. All right, I have a video that I will link, which is my journey to becoming a transaction coordinator. And basically, I did start as an agent, but I had an in-between where I worked as an assistant. And at that point, I was marketing and I was also doing the transactions, but I wasn't a full-time TC. So that was a really good learning opportunity for me to kind of learn the transition. But still, some of these hurdles and things I'm going to talk about today were things I encountered as well. So if you are a potential real estate agent looking to make a transaction coordinator's transition, this video is for you. All right, so first I want to start off on a positive note, which is talking about what knowledge and skills you already have that are going to transition well into this role. I really think it's important, unless you're going to a company that's really going to train you or you have a really solid mentor, to have some type of real estate experience before becoming a transaction coordinator, and I'm going to make another video about that as well. This is important because we want to have a general understanding of the process and the forms and what happens. When I first became a real estate agent, I hadn't even bought my own home. So it was such a learning curve to completely understand the process of what's happening. So first thing that's going to transfer is going to be your knowledge of the process. This is huge. Just understanding the basic flow of the transaction, what are some of the hurdles, when does this typically happen, etc. That's going to make your transition to TC a lot easier. Plus, you likely already have task lists if you are managing your transactions yourself, which is like, after option period, let's check in and see if the lenders ordered the appraisal. Or, okay, at this point in the process, we should probably submit the file for a CDA for compliance. So you probably already have an idea of the workflow and maybe your own checklist that you've used, which you're going to be able to apply to your new checklist and that knowledge to your new transaction management, which is super helpful. And the second biggest piece of knowledge you're going to take away is your understanding of the contracts and the forms. This is really big. While if you're brand new, you could study all the contracts, go to classes, things like that. Having that basic understanding or a deeper understanding of what all the forms mean, what are the key dates, where do I find this piece of information, etc., is really going to help you in your transaction coordinator business as well. So knowing your processes of the real estate transaction and knowing the forms and the contracts is going to be really huge. So you're already starting out at a great advantage having that part of knowledge from your real estate business to apply to your new TC business. So we're off to a great start. Some other small things you'll already be able to apply is going to be just understanding basics like who the parties are, what's the lingo, what documents go to what party. Small things that, when someone's brand new or doesn't have that real estate experience, they may not speak the lingo the same way of your market area. They may not know this person gets this person gets that. So you have a lot of knowledge you're going to be able to apply. But we're going to go through the rest of the video and really starting at the next main topic, which is how do we apply those a little differently in the role as a TC. And another big item I'm going to cover after that is software. And you will have the knowledge of whatever current software you're using or you've used in the past in terms of e-signature, broker compliance, things like that. So you will have a little bit of leg up of at least knowing one or a couple systems, which is great. So now that we've covered everything you're going to be able to take from your current position in terms of knowledge and skill set, let's go into the transition of changing our role and understanding our new responsibilities as a transaction coordinator. So you may think as an agent, oh, well, I do all this in the transaction, so that's exactly what I'm gonna do, minus the showings or minus the open houses, minus the lead generation, etc. Now, it may seem simple, but I do see a lot of people who make this transition from agent to TC struggle with this. It's because you are going to have a different role. Now, if you're starting your own transaction coordinator business and you're deciding exactly what's included in your services, then you can decide how hands-on or hands-off you're going to be with the transactions and what all role you are going to play in the transaction. What are all the tasks you're going to do? Now, if you don't know where to start, you can check out our website for our service offerings, research other TCs in your market area, watch more of our videos, things like that, to get an idea for what TCs are doing, and then specialize that to your market area. I actually have a whole video creating your own contract close checklist, so I will link that as well. It'll be a really helpful resource for you. If you're going to focus on your own market area first, you can take your checklist you may have been using as a real estate agent and kind of tweak it to transaction coordinator. Now, like I said, if this is your business, you can decide whatever you want to do. But typically, we don't see transaction coordinators doing showings, doing, buyer-seller lead generation type activities, real estate agent marketing activities, or, negotiations, attending closings, doing things like that in person. That's kind of the biggest difference, is not doing those in-person things. But also, even if you're working from home, you probably aren't writing contracts, or you might not be negotiating. These things are things you'll need to figure out specifically in your business. So I would recommend, if you haven't yet, thinking, okay, what am I going to include in my TC services? Looking over that list and figuring out, okay, how is this different than what I have been doing? And just knowing it might take you a little bit to adjust to not being so hands-on with the buyer and seller. That's kind of the biggest difference outside of, the in-person activities that you probably won't be doing, is you might not be having all those same conversations with the buyer and seller, depending on how hands-on you're going to be and the agents want you to be. So kind of adjusting to taking a little bit of a step back. I know this can be a little bit of a struggle. So what you want to do is have a firm list and understanding of what services you are going to offer, have an idea of how much you will ideally communicate with the agents, but more so with the buyer and seller. And this can change depending on agents' preferences as well. So we want to make sure we're really holding steadfast in what we're doing. That way we can kind of make an easier transition of not doing those other things we're used to doing. The other big part of this is making sure we have clear boundaries, which I have videos about with creating boundaries with the agents, but in this video, I want to talk about creating boundaries within ourselves. If you are a real estate agent, you're probably used to working 24/7, 365, right? But one of the reasons you may want to become a transaction coordinator is to have more of those set hours, maybe not work nights, not work weekends. And so if that's something you're looking for, then you're going to have to make a transition to not answering the phone after hours, not responding to that email or text on the weekends. And it may sound silly because you're like, no, I can't wait to turn my phone off at 5 o'clock. That's all I've been wanting. That's why I want to do this instead of being an actual agent. But it can be hard to get out of that mindset if that's what you're used to. So thinking ahead on, what am I going to offer, making sure I'm getting comfortable with that so I don't accidentally do too much because I'm used to being an agent, and making sure you're setting boundaries not only with the clients but with yourself on what you're going to do, what your hours are going to be, and what your responsibilities are going to look like. Like I said, check out our website if you want to see what's included in our services as a resource for yourself. Come up with that list so you can really understand your responsibilities and know you're going to take on more of a transaction manager role. You're not going to be doing that maybe one-on-one all the time communicating with the buyer and seller. You're not going to be doing that pre-work or that post-work follow-up most likely. So kind of understanding when the new stuff comes in, I'm taking more of a management role, and knowing your main point of contact is going to be your agent instead of the buyer or seller, like it would now as a real estate agent. Okay, so outside of understanding what skills are going to transfer and what our new responsibilities are, I actually want to talk next about the two biggest hurdles I see and talk with people about when they're making this transition. The first hurdle is the software. So like I mentioned, you are already bringing in your knowledge of the transaction process, knowledge of forms. You probably are familiar with your brokerage's software for compliance, e-signature, maybe you use a couple throughout your career, etc. But one of the biggest things, if you are going to open up and as an independent TC to working with multiple agents, multiple brokerages, things like that, you're going to start encountering a lot of new software and things that people are going to ask you if you're proficient in. I see a lot of real estate agents making this transition panic because like, oh my gosh, there's so much different software out here. I've never used this. I've never used this. I've never used this. So know right now that that's probably one of the biggest hurdles and learning curves you're gonna have to do is learning all these different softwares. This is if you aren't working in-house with your current brokerage or a one brokerage. Still, I recommend getting a knowledge for more, just not putting all of our eggs in one basket. But what's great is you can plan for this, right? Planning for these weaknesses. Go ahead and start looking into popular softwares in your area. I mean, ZipForms is huge, Dotloop, DocuSign. Message me if you want a whole list. I can work on that for you as well. And so you want to go ahead and start maybe doing some trainings. One thing I love about all the software is they're really similar. It may sound overwhelming, but a lot of them are really similar and really user-friendly. So getting in there and learning them may not be quite as hard as you think, but you'll want to count a little bit of time for that. And I would go ahead and recommend starting to do some trainings on popular software as well. One great thing is most of these softwares have trainings within the platform where they will take you through how to do things. They have support if you have questions, things like that. And also there's a ton of great free resources on things like YouTube, like this, that will walk you through different things through the software. So maybe pick a couple that you're not familiar with already and see if you can start learning a little bit about those. So at least when someone calls and says, hey, have you ever worked in this? You can say, I have minimal experience with it, but yes. You know, so that is the biggest thing I see is like, I have no idea how to use this system. Oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do this. And that is really a big hurdle, which may sound small, but as independent TC, I mean, I'm thinking this morning I worked for a couple hours before I made this video. I probably logged into at least 5 different softwares, maybe 10. And it sounds small, but if you want to scale your business and work with multiple agents in multiple brokerages, you're gonna have to learn these different softwares so that you can be proficient. Also, so that you can market that you know these softwares. So I would recommend going ahead, researching, starting to do some training, maybe making some accounts in these so you can do some free trials or experiences so you can at least be a little familiar with the systems. That is going to take you a long way so you don't get a brand new client who uses 10 systems, they have a new contract, we need to submit it, and we got to figure it all out in one day, right? So that's the number one biggest hurdle I see people struggle with when they're used to being an agent, because you may have been at one brokerage and used 1 or 2 systems the same your whole career. So this is going to be a big challenge for you. But like I said, it's not that difficult. It's just something we want to plan for, right? Knowing we might take a little bit longer to learn these new softwares and go ahead and doing some trainings and stuff like that. Okay, and the second biggest hurdle is going to be adjusting, who your main point of contact is in the transaction and getting used to working with multiple people. Now, as I mentioned earlier, now your main point of contact is going to be the real estate agent you're working with, not the buyer or seller. Now, depending on how agents like to do things, I do communicate often with buyers and sellers directly, but it always refers back to the agent as that main point of contact because it is their transaction and they are in charge and we are there to support them. So making sure you kind of make that transition can be a little difficult. And working with multiple people, you may be like, Allison, I've worked with 10 buyers and sellers at once. What do you mean? I mean working with different real estate agents as your clients, and ideally these are repetitive clients that you're working with consistently. They're sending you deals over and over again. Now, getting used to not only all their different systems, but maybe how they all like to communicate, and also getting used to just when you onboard a client, that's hopefully a client for life that we're dealing with every month doing transactions, not a one and done, they want to move in 7 years, they'll hopefully call me again. So it's just a different model in terms of who you're contacting, who your main point of contact is, how you're dealing with them, learning all their different systems, their little things that make them tick, or little specifics about their commission structures and things like that. Having plans in place of where to keep that information and just knowledge of, okay, this is going to be a little different and tricky than just always doing my own deals with my own brokerage. So those are the 2 biggest hurdles I see, is figuring out the different software and then kind of just making that transition of being a different part of the transaction and working with different agents who may have different systems and may have different preferences. So like I said, we can plan for these weaknesses and we can prepare for them, which is great. So, but I want these to be things you're aware of and you're thinking about now. Okay. And next up, I want to talk about, getting clients. So we are taking all this knowledge we have, we're planning ahead for things we may need to learn and improve on. And we also want to make sure we're figuring out how to market our new business. So this is interesting because as a real estate agent, almost anybody is a home buyer and seller potentially, right? So it's very different to make a shift from marketing to the whole world to marketing to a specific niche of people, which is real estate agents. If you watch any of my other videos, I've got one about how to market yourself. I'll link that one as well. But this talks about agents and, also people in that video like inspectors or title companies or lenders, other people we can reach out to. But we're going to be reaching out to only really industry specific contacts, which is very different than when you're marketing yourself as a real estate agent. So make sure when you're thinking through your marketing plan, you're thinking not only who you're marketing to, but also how you might market a little differently to these industry specific contacts. So that is a big thing, a big change, kind of a shift in our marketing that we might not be used to. Even if you were marketing a specific niche like first-time home buyers or a really specific community or listings or something, it's going to be a little different to not be able to market to such a big group of people. We have to get really specific about who we want our ideal clients to be and how we're going to market specifically to real estate agents and industry adjacent people that might be able to give us referrals. So make sure you're thinking about that. Just sharing stuff on Facebook with your friends and family, I think that's an important part of it, but it can't be your whole marketing strategy because we can't just have anyone. We've got to connect with specific agents specifically for these clients. Okay, and the other note I want to make on that is you are going to have a lot of contacts in the real estate world because you're coming from being an agent. Now, my thought on this is if I'm making this transition, I'm ideally transitioning to become a full-time TC. I'm not still producing. If you're still producing, then other agents and in your area may find that a little weird, or what if you guys did a deal together but you're also TCing for them, or they may see you as competition. So if that's the case, you may want to think about marketing outside of your direct contacts. I always recommend starting with people you know first, but if you have people in your area that may, now they know you're brand new, or they may think it's a little weird if you're still producing, then you may need to start reaching outside of your bubble. I always recommend starting with your home state, especially if you are a real estate agent, because you're going to know those forms, you're going to know those processes, you're going to know the lingo better than anybody else. But states are big, so you may just want to start marketing outside of that market area if you're worried about people knowing you're new, or like I said, if you're still producing. I would maybe rely on your sphere for referrals, but all the other agents in your office may not be ready to hire you as your TC right when they know you've started this brand new business. So I think it's important to nourish those contacts, but it may not be the low-hanging fruit that it might be for someone else. So those are things to be aware of. Now, you're like, I'm brand new, but I've been an agent. How should I market myself? So like I said, reaching maybe outside of our potential little bubble, but you have things you can market on, which is great besides someone who's starting a TC business from scratch without the real estate experience. So what I want you to focus on your years in the industry. You can say, I have 10 years of experience in real estate. You can focus on how many transactions you've closed, right? I've closed over 350 transactions, in etc. I focus in this state, I focus in this market area. I've worked with 100 buyers and sellers, etc. Stats like that are going to look impressive to people because it's going to show you have the know-how, right? And so when you're starting out brand new and you don't have all that TC specific experience, relying on your real estate experience for marketing is really going to help you. All right, so I hope you guys found this video helpful. As a quick recap, we talked about the skills you're going to be able to transfer. We talked about understanding our new role and responsibilities and setting boundaries. We talked about the two biggest hurdles, which are software weaknesses and also just getting used to having a different point of contact and different responsibility in the transaction and working with different people. And then we also talked about, planning for our weaknesses. Can we go ahead and prepare to learn some more softwares? Can we go ahead and prepare for how we're going to communicate with different people? Also think of other things you might not know, right? I mentioned I like starting in your home state, but if you plan on expanding to other states, maybe go ahead and start doing some research there. Also, if you've always been a buyer's agent and you don't know much about listings, you might want to start doing some learning there, or maybe that's a service you hold off on offering until you feel a little more confident in it. Then we also talked about how to market yourself, which is maybe expanding yourself outside of your area and relying and highlighting that amazing years or a number of transactions or whatever the experiences is that you have. You have strengths to highlight. Real estate experience is huge in becoming a transaction coordinator. While being a TC is not the same as an agent, a lot of those skills are going to apply, and so you are going to be set up for success. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us a message. I would love to help you. Drop a comment here, and like I said, if you enjoyed the content of this video, please subscribe. It helps us make more great videos for you. Thanks for watching.